Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and thank you for joining us today. I am your host, Sirita Donaldson, Head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Finastra, and we're welcoming you to our fifth live meetup in the series that's part of our hackathon, Hack to the Future Global Fintech Hackathon, HTTF. HTTF is a fintech movement igniting a world of financial stability, inclusion, and empowerment, building on the successes of our previous hackathons to redefine finance for good and build an unbiased fintech future. We continue to use our position in the market to inspire the fintech space to be open by default for everyone. And this year, we aim to drive engagement beyond our global fintech ecosystem with three key themes that are inclusive and open to all. The first is ESG, embedded finance, and DeFi. And today we'll be talking about sustainable and inclusive finance with a focus on closing the wealth gap. And I'm really excited to welcome Renée. Okay, so yes. Hey, Renée, how are you?
Doing great. Thank you for having me, Sirita.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. So I think we're going to just jump right in. So Renée, with over 30 years in the world of finance, I really want to make sure that we're jumping into this conversation, learning more about you. So could you please just take us through your personal career journey and really how you started with the African American Credit Union Coalition and the purpose of AACUC?
Well, let me start with the purpose of AACUC. The purpose is to promote and provide professional development opportunities for our members and advocacy for our members as well, our member credit unions and the professionals who work with us. We are an inclusive organization. Sometimes African American scares people. Well, we're an inclusive organization. Most of our membership is 60-40, probably 60%, what I like to call our sisters and brothers of a lighter hue. And so we are, again, an inclusive organization. My career, wow. So first, I have to tell you, I'm thrilled to be here. This is as one of my younger staff members will say, this is my jam right here.
All right.
About closing that wealth gap, that I'm all about it. But let me give you some background about me. I am the possibility of people serving other people passionately. Let me say that again. I am the possibility of people serving other people passionately. Woo! And it started off in Beverly Hills, California. I was a teller trainee, May 23rd, 1983. I am dating myself. Yes, I'm 61 years old. However, been in finance since that time. And City National Bank, I got my first introduction to what it looked like to help people in financial situations. And so that for me has been extremely extraordinary, great experience. So while I was there, I was a utility clerk, a trainer, a trainer's trainer, and a technical writer. And I left that organization as a bank officer. And I moved down to Atlanta, Georgia, from California. And in Atlanta, Georgia, I found a career in credit unions. I started off with a company called Creditor Resources, and they were a marketing company for credit unions. They had again, in that financial realm, they had a loan product that I helped to, so the people, the programmers will appreciate this. I was a technical writer from changing a DOS product to a Windows product. Woohoo! Windows 32 version. Okay, look, I know a little something about that. I write a little bit of code, just a little bit of code. And so with that organization, I got my first introduction to credit union land. Credit unions are the best. I am a credit union advocate, and I love credit unions. And so being around that organization helped me to get introduced to the AACUC, the African American Credit Union Coalition. And in doing so, I was asked to help write a grant for the Reaching Toward the Future internship program. They didn't have an internship program. They didn't have anything, actually. They didn't have a logo. They didn't have a business address. They didn't have a website. And I had a training company, Sattiewhite Training Productions, where I help people with training and marketing. So the chairman of the organization, I was fussing. You don't have this, you don't have that. He goes, do your thing. So as a young woman at 39 years old, I was entrusted to bring out the best of this organization. That's a national organization. So they were
Wow.
just starting. So my whole thing is about paying it forward, right? So I'm excited about that. But at ACUC, what has happened in the 20 some odd years, we just received something called the Anchor Award. And the Anchor Award is the Nobel Peace Prize for the credit union industry. It's the hugest thing that you could ever.
Congratulations. I think that deserves a round of applause, right?
Yes,
Congratulations.
yes. So it's presented by the National Credit Union Foundation. And what I've been told about the award is that it's given to individuals or an organization that has anchored the credit union movement through trying times. We all must admit the social unrest and the pandemic has gotten us to some trying times. And so, but on the good side of that is, without that probably happening, ACC would have never linked up with Finastra. So I'm seeing all the good things that come out of it, right? So like some of the programs that have come out of the Commitment to Change Credit Unions Unite Against Racism initiative that ACUC is doing and launched throughout the credit union industry. We believe, the board of directors and I believe, that credit unions can help the United States eradicate racism. And in doing so, helping the world eradicate racism. And I know that's a big goal, but yes, I believe that can happen.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And then I think you also serve on the board of the World Council of Credit Unions as well.
Yes, I do. I'm a foundation board member. I'm excited about that. We do some terrific things in other communities around the world. Very, very focused on ensuring that equity, that racial, that gap is not there anymore. How can we help the underserved in other areas internationally? So I'm real proud of being a board member for the World Council Foundation.
And I see we're already getting some comments in. Megan said she loved that brothers and sisters of a lighter hue. So I'll have to learn how to pick that up. And then I'll just say possibility of people serving other people passionately.
Absolutely.
Did I get that right?
You did. Right. You did. I'm impressed. You didn't even write it down. I'm impressed. Yes.
I stumbled across, but I'm gonna make sure I practice that as well. I love that saying. So we spoke a little bit about serving on the board of Council Credit Union. So I do want to take a look at this work from a global lens. According to World Bank, global wealth has grown. However, global wealth inequality is also growing. And with low-income countries share of the global wealth remaining below 1%, despite them having around 8% of the world's population, I would love to get your thoughts on what do you believe are really the contributing factors to the whole rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer?
Well, if you look at, thank you for that question, Sirita. If you look at where are the jobs now, thank goodness for this hackathon. Like seriously, thank goodness for this hackathon. It's we've got to look at STEM if we can, but developing countries, they can't no longer rely on extraction economies because renewable resources, forests and the croplands, it's decreasing. So the shift needs to be to human talent, not just the extraction version of how to do things. And looking at human talent, that across the board, that's equal. We've got the human talent. What we don't have are the opportunities. So countries have to be more intentional about making sure that their people are trained in such a way that they get more that they're getting information out to people. Those that's what's going to create more gaps, right? The people who are creating the fintech opportunities, the people who are the call centers, those types of jobs, those are increasing. But if you don't have access to that, you're going to continue. There's going to continue to be a gap. So I preach education. Get trained. And you don't have to go to a 4-year university. You can get technical training. You can get
absolutely
right. So there's what different ways can you help yourself by being exposed, along with financial products and services that will help reduce the gap as well. What are
Okay.
the things that we are doing, like this hackathon, creating those types of products and services for people in low income countries that they can really get and have a stronghold on, so they can do better for themselves and their families.
Absolutely. Making sure they have those skills and competencies to move into those types of roles. Okay. So I hear you saying these lower income countries need to diversify, rebalance kind of these national portfolios, right? To be more resilient and start investing in the human capital,
Yes.
human talent market, right? So
Yes.
the education, the health, making sure we're not just extracting, right? And depleting, so we can kind of manage those future risks. Awesome. And I love how you said like talent is evenly dispersed really across the planet, but opportunity is not. So I want to dive in and look at this from a family perspective. And I really like to look at things from an intersectionality lens, because despite having similar qualifications, women, people of color, members of the LGBTQ community, persons with disabilities, they're still earning lower wages than their straight, white, non-disabled male counterparts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we know that household wealth also determines a family's mean to invest, right, in the education that we just talked about, in health and healthcare, and starting a business and buying a house, all of those things. So besides just the lack of opportunity, what are some of the historical issues that you believe that have led us to this income and wealth gap challenge that we still see in communities today?
Well, I would say any excuse me, any country, any group of people that have been enslaved, that in itself starts you off with an inequity, right? Your people, your community, your brethren have had to work as without any wages, any living wages anyway, for a very long period of time. So whatever length of time that is, that sets the that's a historical perspective. So any group,
Intergenerational.
right? Any group that's been enslaved, that right there, specifically in the United States, with Jim Crow adding to it. So the slavery is demolished, but then there are laws that are put in place to hold people of color down. And when you're looking at how can you rise above it, you have to look at what happened, how was it caused. So again, it's those laws that were put in place to make sure that people couldn't rise up. It's being enslaved, or disproportionately being able to like migrant workers, right? So you don't have your own, you don't have access to ownership. That has been a big challenge as to finding wealth. Home ownership, owning property, is one of the best ways to have wealth and increase your wealth. But if you have these barriers in place, these historical barriers in place, that's what's happened. The loan products not being the redlining, those processes that aren't helping people, but putting barriers in the way that people cannot get what they need financially. So it's all this historic perspective in terms of being enslaved, and also the laws that are put in place to keep a certain group of people down.
Yeah, and I love how you spoke to access to ownership, right? Because if we're really looking for sustainable change to some of these wealth gap issues, we have to strive towards building generational wealth and exploring how assets actually pass from one generation of a family to the next. And so, what do you believe is the role of banks, of credit unions, of fintechs, in really helping to bridge this wealth gap?
Well, and nonprofits, right? So ACC is a 501c3 nonprofit. We have a commitment to change, Credit Unions Unite Against Racism credit card. I call it the other black card. It's a beautiful card. And what that card does is we're hoping that we'll be able to provide financial literacy to some families. We're hoping that we can teach people about the stock market and how to invest, and when and how. So it takes so little, right? We don't know that though. This is the black card.
Okay, nice.
Yeah. So, but things of that nature, making sure that there are equitable products and services. That's, again, this hackathon is so important. These are some of the things that come out of that. These young, bright minds are thinking about ways that we can close that racial gap. How can, I know that Brian Young is doing something with Home Lending Pal. I'm so excited about that. And that's where producing an algorithm differently than what typical for mortgage lending statistics, which the criteria for adjudication, that is changing, and that's what needs to happen. That's what all these organizations need to come together and do: provide financial literacy, walk a mile in someone else's shoes, just to have some empathy. I get upset when I hear about banking while Black. That's unfortunate. We need more cultural awareness. So cultural awareness, along with understanding what financial products and services will work best for people.
I love that. I love that. We have some comments coming in here. BP said too much of U.S. financial education is focused on spending management. There should be more focus on how to not be a mega consumer, save, invest if you can afford, but in general, consume less. So I'm wondering your credit card as well. What's the perk of using that Black card instead of going to another credit card company?
Glad you asked me that, Sirita. So a couple things for our credit, for AACC's membership. If they want to provide that card to their membership, they can as well. And it can be it can have their logo on it. We're also giving back to historically Black colleges. So part of what we get as transactional income, we're giving that back to historically Black colleges, and we want to start giving it back to providing a back office solution for historically Black college credit unions. And so from that perspective, and also there are a lot of executives who are people of color who are the first generation making a six-figure income, but their credit is horrible because we weren't taught how to do credit well, or we didn't have the access to do credit well, or everybody in our family is looking to that one person who's got a real good job and needs to loan out. So we have a special portion and product for that particular executive, so that they can have and feel and have the credit that they deserve, and teach them how to do better. So that's exciting. That's why we care about you. We're not going to give you credit if you can't afford it. We're going to teach you how to use your credit for your advantage.
Okay, so part of that card is a financial literacy component to that?
For some, there's three different types, right? So there's one that, any person off the street can get a credit card if they want, but there are specialized compartments for it, for people who we want to help bring up that equity. We want to make sure that they understand how to use it. And so I pass it off to one of my new staff members. So I don't have any more details about that.
No, I think that was just great, giving us some insight. And I think it builds off of PB's conversation as well, because it's not, spending may not necessarily be bad. It's how are we using our credit in the right way to get us, and how are we leveraging those dollars in the right way, and learning how to manage the money that we have coming in, and also the credit that we also have. And many people are afraid to either use credit, right, because they don't know enough about it, or they're using too much credit, right, and then they can't dig themselves out of the hole. So I appreciate that. And just to recap some of the other things that you said, changing the algorithms, right? So at Finastra, we're really focused on, and then it's International Women's Day was yesterday, is Women's History Month. So we're talking about break the bias, but we need to start breaking the bias in our algorithms and in the software that we're using. In Finastra, we have taken a step, and actually coming out of one of our previous hackathons, FinEqual algorithm was actually embedded into one of our lending software to really help with making sure our customers can see where they may have bias in their processes, and build out different reports so that we are breaking the bias in those algorithms. Financial literacy, having empathy, cultural awareness, all of those things are great things that companies should be looking to do. Credit unions, banks, leveraging nonprofits like yourself to help in that space. Okay, so trying to get us to this place of sustainable change, right? It's taking time. It's like, I feel like we're moving in the right direction, but it's taking time. And we see that the lack of financial security combined with these disproportionate experiences in times of crisis, right? Pandemics, layoffs, family member illnesses. We can talk about how, as women, right, a lot of those things lay on the shoulders of the lead woman in the household, right? But then also from a male perspective, or when you add the intersectionality lens, if you identify in these multiple ways, if you're a woman and you're Black and you're Muslim, you know, all of these things can have an impact on your financial security. And it really can lead to different financial stresses that lead to mental health challenges and negativity, and even an employee's productivity as well. So what are some ways that you see organizations really addressing some of the financial stresses and mental health concerns as we navigate through these unprecedented times?
Well, I'm pleased to say that at ACUC, we started the Commitment to Change conversations. And when the murder of George Floyd happened, I remember getting a phone call at 6 o'clock in the morning from someone who's not a morning person. She had been up all night. And I'm a morning person, so she knew she could call me. And my number 2 at the time, Michelle Outlaw. And what she said was, we've got to do something. I said, what do you want to do? So we had a conversation, and within 4 hours, we gathered men who had sons. We asked them to be in shirts, suits, and ties. And we had a call throughout our membership. And so that we could have the conversation about the how do they feel about that, and really get it out. And we felt if we didn't say something, Sirita, that we would be complicit in that. Right. We further went on to, we were supposed to have an in-person conference. And because of the pandemic, we couldn't. And so we did a virtual conference. And in that pivot, I had a meeting with the team, the conference committee, there were about 40 people. And I told them, well, we need to pivot. We're not having it in person. It needs to be virtual, and figure it out. And they came up with a beautiful virtual event that lasted 5 days. We had over 1,000 people register for this conference. And we started it off with a licensed counselor talking about the trauma of the social unrest and the pandemic. And that was tremendous. So having those types of conversations, I know CUNA Mutual Group, one of our large, one of our Chairman's Circle partners, and a very force to be reckoned with in the credit union space, they did a lot of EAP work, along with bringing in people in to have those conversations, licensed therapists, if people needed to go see someone. And I think having those conversations, many of the leagues all of the leagues partner with ACUC with its initiative of trying to eradicate racism, the Commitment to Change. But people were having conversations. I flew so much, Delta is my primary carrier. I flew so much I became platinum.
All right. Yeah.
So I was there in person. I was there on Zoom calls. And
I'm sure it was helpful to many of those organizations having you there on site to carry on those conversations.
Well, not just on site, but with the Zooms. I mean, I was doing 3 and 4 speaking engagements a day because it was so necessary, just so necessary. And so I think that the organizations that did a really good job of taking care of their employees were those who sought out people who could have the conversation, those who when they heard their people when they said, you didn't say anything about this, and this is affecting me. I had no idea, because I report to a board of directors that looks like me. We have one self-proclaimed salt in the pepper, Ed Fresnel. And but so I don't know, I don't experience the type of trauma that other executives may experience. And I'm really proud of ACUC that we stand in the gap for so many, what I like to call the colored majority.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I think having the conversation, I think that was a time where many organizations were providing the space where their employees could come and talk about how they're feeling, how they're dealing with it, what resources are available. And I know Finastra, we offer, you mentioned the employee assistance program, but we also offer something called our resilience champions, where we have a group of employees that are actually trained to help be a mediator and direct other employees to the necessary resources and partnerships with like an organization called Task Human, where you can get that additional counseling and even financial literacy training as well. So definitely agree and I commend you on the work that you did during that time. So let's see. When we talk about closing the wealth gap, I think when people listen to these conversations, I don't think they fully realize that fixing the wealth gap problem isn't just something that will positively impact historically excluded groups, right? Or minority groups, or what did you just call it?
The colored majority.
The colored majority. And I was reading a McKinsey report that they put out in June of last year, and they wrote on the economic state of Black America and said that closing racial gaps across the economy is not just about righting historical wrongs, but it's also about choosing a more dynamic future and realizing the full potential of a massively underutilized source of talent, right? So we're also hearing about this great resignation and all of those things. And when you tap into that underutilized source of talent, then there's benefits to all Americans, right? So this was a US focused article. So to you, what does this dynamic future look like in reality? And how is the AACUC working with the Black community and financial services companies to get us there? Because I really want people to understand the what's in it for me. Everybody's always thinking about like what's in it for me from a company perspective, or even as an individual perspective if you don't identify as a minority.
So colored majority. So I refuse to say minority.
Right.
I just won't say it.
Colored majority.
Color majority. So when you're looking at statistics, if you stick to the facts, right, here in the United States, 2030, 2040, by that time, the colored majority is going to be in place. It's going to be in play. If you as a business are not looking at how to serve that target audience, then you're going to be a dinosaur. You're going to be left behind, and fintechs will come in and swoop up all your business because they will have done what needed to be done in terms of looking at who the audience is or going to be and writing code for that audience, writing products and services for that audience. I think that organizations that are looking to do better and be better can take a look at how they can modify what they're currently doing to be more inclusive. What does that look like? What steps are you taking? Do you have a DEI roadmap? Do you see where DEI intersects with your business? And if you don't, find somebody who can show it to you, because that if organizations don't do that intersectionality work on the DEI work to business, then they're gonna be dinosaurs. They're not gonna survive. You have to have things in place so that you can be fair and equitable. And the way to do that, ACC is partnering with the leagues, doing more trainings, looking at certifications. Is having that information, that cultural sensitivity, that's going to make the difference. The organizations that are going to stay in business and be ahead and lead will be those who are looking at the culture, not just what they feel, but what's the culture around them? Who are they targeting? And how can you make life easier for that group of people? And I think that's the key, Sirita, that when we're looking at how can we solve for X, in the solving, how can you make it better? How can you make it, and it's not so much competitive, but how can you make it fair? And what's fair across the board?
And that's why I think it's important we start talking about this equity lens, right? Because the difference between equality and equity, and people need to understand the equity piece is meeting people where they are, right? Both of those principles, both of those words are based on fairness, right? But the equity piece is giving people what they need to be successful, to be on that same playing field. And if, to your point, if companies are doing that and really looking at how an employee feels in their space, if they feel included, if they feel like they belong, they're ultimately going to be performing at a higher rate, right? And I think when we think about the economy perspective as well, you should be seeing additional jobs, right? When you're investing in the Black community, you should be seeing additional businesses coming up, more money exchanging hands. So that's an additional benefit for sure.
Right. I have an employee, and I don't hesitate to say, eres mi favorita. She is my favorite, and she's Latina. And
Are you allowed to have favorites?
My
Renee?
team knows I have a favorite. SB is a favorite. That she does everything I ask her to do. She's always got a great disposition. She's Johnny on the spot, and that's the kind of behavior I want modeled. So there's a, you know what I mean? There's a standard. And when you have standards for people, then it makes a difference. So I encourage organizations to have a standard. What are you looking for when you're trying to meet the needs of the people where they are? So for instance, for SB, she's a wonderful, wonderful employee. And I know that I'm not supposed to have a favorite, but I'm not a mom. So since I don't have biological children. So since I don't have biological children, I'm claiming SB as my favorite. Now, having said that, right? Having said that, that's how we have to be about, while SB is my favorite, I treat everybody fairly, right? So what's equitable, what's fair. So I know that hopefully that's encouraging my team. Oh, we want to be like SB.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree with that. It's a good role model to have as part of the team for sure. So I see some additional questions and comments coming through the chat. If you have any more, make sure you're adding them in, because I'm going to ask you one more question, Renee, and then we're going to dive into some of the comments and questions that we have from the audience.
Oh no, I'm
afraid. Yeah, let's hit her with the tough stuff. This is a very important topic, and I want to make sure we're answering the questions that people really have about this, right? And that we're giving you all some practical things to do to start and join us on the journey, right? Join the movement. So, any last words on what organizations should be doing to really help close the income and wealth gap for marginalized group or the colored majority? And really to get everyone to a place of economic growth and long-term prosperity for generations to come. Last thoughts.
We need to create a focus on financial education and financial responsibility, particularly in the ages of 14 to 24. Get the young people shored up. I'd say 14, 24. I would start at 10.
I was thinking even younger. My son is 8. When he was 5, we went and got a bank account set up for him. He has a little app. Like, there's so many things that banks are doing now too. But yeah, okay, 14 to 24. Maybe that's
I think we can do it earlier than that. Yeah. Money can't be a taboo topic. You can't stick it underneath the mattress anymore. You got to have a conversation about it. We need to learn and earn. We need to budget and save. And finally, the key to wealth building is understanding compound interest. $5 a day investing in the stock market, mutual funds can create millions of dollars from age 25 to 65 if you're consistent. If someone had told me that when I was 20 years younger, I wouldn't be on this call right now. I'd be a millionaire somewhere.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, I just started with Stash. I think the Stash app. My husband, he's a prop trader. He does all, and it goes over my head. So I was like, all right, let me start getting into this, figuring out what this is all about. And I think that's an entry app that people could use to really just start to wet their whistle in the space.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. So let's look at what has come in from our audience. So I see, let me go back to the top. Megan had a question. We need people of all trades. I think this is going back when we were talking about the global view. However, all education comes with its cost. How do we get around this? The cost of education.
Well, there's a lot of online offerings now, so you can supplement that way. So supplementing through online courses, asking for scholarships, being outside of the box with how you get the money for tuition or the money for books. I remember years ago, one of my best friend's brother is a pilot, and he gave us an assignment. He wanted to go to a certain pilot school, and he said, he went to all the family. He says, I need everybody to give me $50. $50. Everybody's got a $50 payment. And that helped him to get through school. So you have to think outside of the box with that. I think that, and it depends on what area of the world you're in, right? What you have access to as far as education. But do get as much free stuff as you can that's out there, or anything that is government that you can apply for that you have access to. And sometimes going through governments can be a process, but you have to think about the bigger picture. What's your end game? If education is what you need to get better, then that's what you need. Then jump through the hoops to get there, because it's no one said it's going to be an easy process, right, but it is a process.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a LinkedIn user who asked the question, how to address the risk of loosely regulated fintechs, and how do we protect people from the risk of washing away their hard-earned and accumulated wealth?
That is a tough question. Thank you for that question. I think that we, especially people who are in this hackathon, when you're creating your products and services, you have to do so with integrity. You've got to have a high bar of integrity. I don't know that we as individuals can regulate that. We can only hope that people are doing their best with pure intentions. As far as regulatory agencies, they have to be open to looking deeper and further. I don't think that the regulatory agencies are as hip as they need to be to govern the fintech. I think they need to get younger people in who understand the ins and outs of fintechs, and that way they can help guard against what that question was.
And move faster. Move faster as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so Megan, financial literacy is so important. We have 2 programs that came out of the hackathons that support this. What are some topics you think should be covered in this? So what type of financial literacy topics should we be covering? With
savings, budgeting, investing.
Savings, budgeting,
investing, okay, and insurance, life insurance. As a
young life insurance, okay.
Life insurance is key, especially when you're young. And when you have your table set and you have your 4 legs, you're making sure that the table's not wobbling. So young people who are starting off with families, that's the best time to buy insurance, because it's cheaper because you're younger. Right. As you get older, the insurance gets higher. The goal is to self-insure. So you get, and I believe in term insurance, but some insurance is better than no insurance, right? So I don't want to have the what type of insurance debate. Although if you do term early, you have it's a cheaper monthly payment, but a larger coverage for your family. If something happens to you and you're the wage earner, you want your family protected. What's gonna protect that? So even though you're doing term, you're also doing savings. Eventually, you should be able to save enough where you're self-insured.
Okay.
So that's the goal.
And self-insured meaning you have
you saved enough.
Yeah.
So if you say you want to leave your family $200,000 in case of your death, that you have saved enough that when you get to $200,000, you no longer need to be paying for an insurance policy because you've self-insured yourself.
And I think the thing about life insurance is that many of the colored majority probably don't have that, and they let the policies lapse. And then when they do pass away, those are additional costs that their family is incurring to bury them. So that just takes the family in a deeper hole. Whereas if you do pass away and you have that additional coverage, you are setting yourself up to your family up to be able to pay off the house, maybe, right? So now you have an asset, or do other things with those funds from an investment perspective as well, if everyone is working and okay. So I appreciate that you brought that piece up. Okay, so it says also, this is from PB, also women of color are particularly behind in wealth. Financial services have created a jargon heavy insular environment, which is intimidating for most people. I don't know if you have, that was pretty much a comment, not a question. I think for me as a woman who was never really taught about finances, it wasn't until I met my husband that he really started to pour into me more, right? The importance of saving, budgeting, investing, those three things. And now we're able to raise our children in that way. But do you have anything to kind of speak on in regards to PB's comment?
Don't be afraid. There are books out there. There's videos out there. There are people who can help you. Ione McNeil is wonderful. Our baby millionaire. She's got a book out. There's investment clubs, Better Investing. We partner with them. There are organizations out there that will help you. Investment portfolio managers who do really well. We've got some young people. This is really funny. ACC has invested. We're investing for the future of the organization. And then with investing, the two people that we looked at were young people, and that was really great, right? So they're young people are now getting into the investment business, and it's not just what we used to look at, white guys in khaki shorts or khaki pants with that stereotype is now gone.
Right.
It's a whole different attitude. So I say jump into it as a female. There are books, get in there and get it done. Just get started and be consistent. Consistency is what's the key.
Absolutely. And for me, I'm just going to speak from my own personal experience, like apps like the Stash app, right? It comes embedded with all of these little micro learning opportunities. So at least you're starting somewhere. It doesn't have to be, reading a whole book where all the terminology is going over your head. Just start somewhere. Start today. I love PB talking about the first step is teaching kids how to save, not spend too much, and invest, right? Like they learn to drive. So Renee, what are your thoughts on fintechs that claim to help the underserved, but then charge 35% interest rates?
They might as well be a payday lender.
Right.
That's crazy. That's insane. It just makes me want to punch somebody, because that's fintech is supposed to be easy. It's supposed to uplift people and help. It's
help
not
bank the unbanked.
Yeah,
that was the easy answer. Yes. And then so another LinkedIn user asks, what does the financial literacy training program for the communities fall under your company's CSR initiatives or strategic business initiative? Okay, so asking, does financial literacy really fall under corporate social responsibility initiatives for a company, or should it be under a strategic business initiative, right?
It depends on what the mission of the organization is.
Yep.
So and what that organization provides. So if that organization provides a particular product that's related to financial literacy, then that might be part of their strategic business initiatives. If it's like us, we don't necessarily provide financial literacy like that as a company. We provide a plethora of opportunities, but we do have a financial reality fair that we do for teens every year, because we're committed to that. So that would be part of our corporate responsibility.
Yeah, for sure. And I think at Finastra, we have our ESG group that leads a lot of our financial literacy work. But we also have a customer where we're providing student lending software. And as part of that, we make sure that we're embedding the financial literacy component in that software as well. So it is a part of our business strategy and moving the needle in this space. And it's a part of our ESG efforts, for sure.
Robert
It's
Smith is
always
one of my heroes. It's like, my God, y'all are doing it. I'm in love with that. I love it.
We're trying.
Yeah.
Look, we are on a mission to be the most loved and inclusive company in fintech, and we really want to lead the way and help other financial services companies really jump in and join the movement. So I see. Will decentralized finance? Is that the future? I guess they're asking that. Will decentralized finance will decentralized finance the future?
I can't answer that question. That's an economist question, and I stay away from stuff I don't know nothing about. So I hate to not answer a question, but that one is one for an economist.
And you know what you should do with that question, Meyer? You should put it on the post it under this recording, and let's see what other folks have to say about that, right? Let's have a discussion, right? The future, this is the future. Where do we think it's going to lead us? How do we play a role in that? I mean, part of our hackathon is around DeFi. So definitely not well versed in it, but I think it's a great question that we should present to the broader audience and see what we get back. All right. Talked about a little bit about life insurance. So a LinkedIn user said self-insured should cover life as well as health insurance, right? And that's in order to achieve what the financial plan aspires to achieve. So I love that. So you should be saving enough so that it's covering that life insurance amount that you want to leave your family, but also covering health insurance for sure. Yep. Pierre saying super interesting session. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, Madeline. So Maddie, do you have any tips for how we can invest in a way that promotes inclusive finance?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would look at social responsibility mutual funds. So things that are coming out that have a social responsibility bent attached to them, that makes your dollars grow, but it's also helping with social change. So that's how I would look at that. I would look at those companies that offer like Finastra, like those companies that you can invest in. And I don't know if you can invest in Finastra or not, but I'm saying companies that are very clear about what their social responsibility give back is going to be, or what their mission is.
Awesome. And I'm just going to use this as a plug. It's not necessarily, it's investing, I think, in the future. But when you're spending your dollar, make sure that you're investing in minority owned businesses, right? Because that is also helping and investing, I think, in a broader future that we were talking about as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Yes. So thank you. Okay. So I think those are all the questions. I think it's Mayer was mentioning, if he or she will post the question or bring more transparency and innovation to wealth. So talking about DeFi, saying it'll bring more transparency and innovation to wealth creation and management, thereby reducing wealth creation time from generation to decades to just a few years, all by harnessing technology and product innovation. Yes, that is the hope for it. Love that. Thank you for that insight. And then PB said he's checked some of those ESG funds, and they have companies like Microsoft and Visa in it. But he said, I think many ESGs are just a scam. That's an interesting thought. I'm hoping, I think there is definitely, just like there's a broader focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion, we're now having a broader focus and people are being more intentional in the ESG space. So there's a lot under that ESG umbrella, but I think we can all see the global warming and the temperature changes, and just talking about what's happening with low-income countries, and you got to get out of that extraction mentality. So there's definitely things we should be taking notice of and making changes right now in our lifestyles. And I'm glad to see more companies focused on DE&I, which is really under the social umbrella of ESG, and ESG for sure, because it's necessary, it's needed. And I think that's it. So thank you. Thank you, Renee. I think this was a powerful conversation that hopefully has ignited, a fuse in many of the folks that were out there listening. Hopefully people will go out and begin to, what do we say? Save, budget, invest.
Invest.
And
get some life insurance.
Get some life insurance. Any last words before I close us out?
No, I leave you with, be bold, be mindful, be brave.
All right, great. So what I'm going to do is I do have a 2-minute video that I want to share with our audience before we close out. So Sharon, if you wouldn't mind kicking off the video.
It took for America to see the brutal murdering of another human being. George Floyd wasn't the first person to ever die under someone's brutalness and lack of empathy. In that moment, people got it and said, no more. We will have this no more. When there's tragedy, you've got to look for what's the hope. The murder of George Floyd, the pandemic with all the bodies, people not being able to be with their families, being quarantined, all of that pain. If you're a believer, and I'm a believer, you know that on the other side is goodness and hope.
In the middle of a global pandemic, the horrific events of George Floyd happened and the world came to a screeching halt and made everybody look. When we looked for help, for direction, it was AACUC and Renee that were there. There was no more time to leave things unsaid.
We were talking about what happened with George Floyd and how angry we were and how helpless we felt.
AACUC brought so many workers across race, across ethnicity, across age, across gender, and really talked emotionally and deeply about how this impacted our work and our mission. And that was truly remarkable.
I feel like Martin Luther King. I have a dream. The dream is that we don't have to have that conversation, that we are truly living the people helping people motto. Credit unions are uniquely positioned to lead the United States in eradicating racism. Executives used to
Okay, thank you. I love how the video, you mentioned looking for hope, the goodness on the other side, talking about how you're bringing together really people from the full spectrum of diversity and really talking about how this impacts the work we're talking about, closing the wealth gap, the work you all are doing at the AACUC is really aligning with other businesses and their mission and their work. And really driving and moving the needle. So I'm going to go ahead and close us out. I think you said possibility of people serving other people passionately. Love that. I'm going to keep using it. But thank you very much, Renee, for an insightful session. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I know it's just the start. Please, everyone, feel free to connect with Renee and myself on LinkedIn. And stay tuned for more information on our next sessions. And of course, check out all the hackathon info and events at fintech.devpost.com. Thanks a lot, Renee. And thank you everyone for joining. Have a wonderful rest of the day.